Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, refocusing Ramadan. The sliver of a crescent moon is supposed to begin a month of reflection for Muslims around the world, even celebration. Palestinians in Gaza will also mark 157 days of Israel's war.
I feel like there can be no discussion of Ramadan without discussion of Gaza.
I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take. Deanna, Othman, welcome to The Take and Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak.
For those who don't have the pleasure of having our history, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Deanna Othman. I live in Oakland, Illinois, and I pretty much have been in this area my entire life. I am Palestinian American. I'm from a village in the West Bank called Betunia, and my husband is from Gaza. I do a lot of media work for Palestinian organizations, specifically American Muslims for Palestine in Chicago. And this is something I've been involved in for about 15 years now.
And you and I go way back, growing up together, attending the same schools all the way from elementary and high school to university. So it is really good to have you on the podcast, though I wish the circumstances were different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Deanna, I have purchased my dates for the month, and I've ensured that they are conflict and occupied labor-free, and I will feast on them when sunset hits at around 6:58 p.m. But this year, it's not going to feel as celebratory to break a day of fasting when I know that I will have spent a large part of the day scrolling through updates on my phone from Gaza, where Palestinians are being starved under Israel's assault. I know that you have family in Gaza. Your husband's family is there. What do you know about how they will be marking this Ramadan?
I mean, unfortunately, they have marked Ramadans under Israeli assault previously, but never anything like what they're experiencing right now. You know, in the past, we thought that what we were going through, worrying about them, was the worst that could possibly happen. And now we realize that pales in comparison to what they're going through right now. We don't know when they're going to be able to find food. And it's very difficult for us to get any details from them about what they actually have. They actually don't like to, call it complaining. They don't want to complain about their lack of, and it's actually mind-boggling, the level of patience that they have in dealing with a situation that no human being can imagine being in. But we know they're struggling to get any sort of food that is fit for human consumption. I'm sure everyone has heard the stories about using animal feed in order to make bread.
The people started using animal or livestock feed to combat their and their children's hunger here in the north of Gaza.
I'm cleaning the animal feed from bugs and pesticides and dirt. We grind it, turn it into bread, and eat it. We're hungry most of all. You see what we do. We take the worms out, turn it into flour, and eat it, even though it doesn't taste good, but we need to combat our hunger.
So I simply can't imagine what fasting under those types of conditions is going to be like for them, knowing that they may not have something to break their fast on.
And what about your family in Betunia, a city in the occupied West Bank, a little north of Jerusalem?
Mm-hmm.
How are they coping, and how are they looking forward to facing this Ramadan?
They're in a lot better of a situation, but obviously they are still under occupation as well. People generally are on high alert in the West Bank because you never quite know what's going to happen. But overall, life is very different for everyone throughout Palestine right now, especially with the awareness of what's happening and feeling very helpless and powerless to do anything to remedy that situation, especially when you're in such close proximity to it.
So then, thinking of that close proximity, I wonder what it must feel like for you, oceans away, and your community in the U.S. Cook County, the area of Illinois that you live in, you work in, we grew up in, is home to the largest Palestinian population in the United States. And the school where you work is in a suburb nicknamed Little Palestine. How will this Ramadan be different? And what do you plan to do differently in light of everything that's happening in Gaza?
Mm-hmm. I feel that it's going to be very different. Any type of celebration seems out of place. It seems wrong. It seems tone deaf. I know that, at least in this area, Ramadan is typically very festive because of the huge population of Muslims, as you mentioned, and specifically Palestinians. So we're used to having a lot of iftars where people are breaking fast together. A lot of times they're extravagant, too extravagant, in my opinion. But this year, at least within our circles here, a lot of people have been talking about you should not be posting what you're eating on social media, which is something people typically do in Ramadan, or even posting their cravings, right? I know that there has been calls for any sort of festivities that people may have been planned to be canceled, or at least the focus to be changed. Yes, this is a time for faith and practice and community, but at the same time, we have to be aware of what our fellow brothers and sisters are going through. And so we really need to be conscious of the way that we consume, particularly with not having food wastage, not being overly celebratory in a time when there's really, unfortunately, nothing to celebrate. And I think a lot of people want to orient their fasts back to the spirituality of it, back to the element of worship and prayer, in hopes that that can offer some, solace in a time like this, rather than making it just about food and fun and celebration and the consumerism aspect of it.
So, Deanna, I know that you spent part of 2023 in Gaza. What was it like? And now what is it like seeing what it looks like today?
Coming in as an American, you're not used to having 6 hours of electricity a day in the summer. And, it being sweltering heat and not having fans or AC at all. My husband's family is in a refugee camp. And so it's very, very tightly, populated. And so even there's not much air circulation. There's no grass or greenery for kids to go out and play. It's just rubble, right? And gravel. But there was so much beauty, right, that we really appreciated in hindsight, being able to go to the sea and be on the beach and, feeling like we were among our people, right? But it's very jarring, especially looking back at photos and seeing everyone so happy being together. And that's one of the things that a lot of the young people have mentioned, like, wow, we thought living in Gaza was so difficult before. And look at the blessings that we were in. And they would post photos of them with their friends, photos outside, photos getting ice cream, things that people normally do. And they were just like, wow, we didn't realize the amount of blessings we had in our life until now. So it's kind of left me speechless just even thinking about that.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because for many Muslims, observing this month isn't only about abstaining from food and water and the like. It's also about centering yourself spiritually and drawing on your faith to remind you the importance of why any of us are here on this earth. For Palestinians in Gaza, I think that it's probably fair to say that many of them feel they couldn't have gotten through those days without drawing on their faith. For those who haven't seen evidence of that via the myriad social media videos, can you describe what that's looked like in your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that, at least for me, that I'm seeing with family and with friends that I'm keeping in touch with. Without centering their faith, there's no way that they would have been able to handle what they're handling in the way that they are handling it. So I'm seeing so many of their posts, although they are expressing the extreme difficulties that they're facing, they are still drawing on their faith in God. They are still posting prayers. They're posting verses from the Quran that provide them with that sort of comfort and hope that this is not for nothing and that God has a greater plan and that this is a tragedy on the road to liberation, and believing that there is a purpose and that this is not the end, right? And that those who have died are in a better place and that their lives and their deaths will mean something for the liberation of Palestine. And this is not to say that they are perfect or that they don't have doubts or difficulties, but it's to say that despite all of that, that they are grounded in their faith and they are steadfast in it. And so for Ramadan, I think that, yes, they are seeing that it is going to be obviously a huge challenge in terms of just surviving, but they are hopeful about the blessings that it will bring and the strength that it'll bring and hopefully the miracles that will come along with it.
So, Deanna, in Islam, as you know, there is a prophetic saying that the believers are like a single body. If one organ or limb happens to be in pain, then the entire body will be in pain. How are you balancing the celebration of this month and making the abstention from food and water meaningful to you in the face of the daily atrocities in Gaza, the violence and devastation that Muslims are facing in Yemen under airstrikes, Sudan in civil war, Syria and the wreckage of war, Turkey and Morocco reeling from earthquakes, Uyghurs in detention camps in China? I could go on.
Yeah.
How do you balance all of that? Because you're also a mom. You have young kids who you need to feel excited about this religious obligation this month.
Yeah.
How does that weigh on you?
Honestly, it's very difficult. I'm not going to lie. I, have found just getting through this and not completely melting down has been very difficult, especially as you said, I have children and I don't want to be in a complete shambles in front of them. I have a 7-year-old and he's very aware of what's happening, even though I try to keep him away from images and things that are not appropriate for his age. But he's very much so aware of the situation because he recently was there. I find him asking a lot of questions. He's had a lot of nightmares. It's been very difficult for him to sleep. He's constantly asking about his grandmother and family. He's asking, why are presidents bad? Why would a president be bad to his people? Very innocent, childlike, but pretty deep questions. And so he is excited for Ramadan. And so I don't want to put a damper on that for him because he's going to try to fast an entire day for the first time. And so he's very excited about that. So it is difficult in balancing that sort of excitement and encouragement for him with the reality of everything happening everywhere else.
Well, finally, Deanna, a few days ago, you posted this on X. Nothing is okay. Nothing is normal. Don't act like it is. Do you have any hope?
My only hope is looking at the long term. Short term, obviously, there's not very much hope, but I pray that this leads to liberation in the future, that this was not for nothing, that the entire Gaza Strip was basically destroyed and leveled. I'm finding it difficult with people's expectations that we continue to live our lives as if nothing is happening. And that is very difficult because that kind of makes me lose hope, because I'm like, we're in the middle of this happening and people want to move on. They want to act as if nothing is going on. And so imagine when it eventually, hopefully does end in a ceasefire, we don't want people to go back to their lives as usual. We don't want to forget everything that has happened. And we want to make sure that we continue working for a greater resolution and for liberation. But it's hard to go to work, do the things that you normally do, because in the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, who cares about anything? Look what's happening around us, right? Look at the world crumbling around us. Like you said, not even just Gaza. There are countless examples. And so it does feel like anything you do is fruitless. I mean, I've been feeling that in terms of advocacy work. Regardless of how many protests you have, how many congressmen you visit, how many articles you write, like what has really changed? Not very much, right? So it's very easy to feel despondent in light of that. But I think my faith does give me that hope that this is part of a larger plan. This is a step towards a better future for all Palestinians. And that's really the only thing that I can hope for.
And that's The Take. This episode was produced by Fahrinisa Campana with Sonia Bagat, Negin Oliai, Zainab Bazr, Sariel Khalili, David Enders, Chloe K. Lee, Miranda Lin, Ashish Malhotra, Khalid Sultan, Amy Walters, and me, Malika Bilal. Alex Roldan is our sound designer. Joe Plord mixed this episode. Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer, and Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. We'll be back.